Hello and welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us here today. That opening, for those who don't know, is was the fanfare for the Common Man by Copeland, and better known in these parts as Barry's video. Barry Perkins, our principal trumpet player, was involved in that project, and we're all very proud of him. So we wanted to include that today. Today we have as our special guest a gentleman, Gary Good, who's a legend in many orchestras across the country. And For those who know him, he's got a lot of stories, and I've invited him, and hopefully we can have a fun hour of incredible stories, behind the scenes stuff, and welcome, Gary.
Well, thank you, Dennis. It's I'm not sure that being a legend is necessarily a compliment, but we'll go back and check with some people in Buffalo or Baltimore. Um, Actually, watching that performance of Copeland reminded me of the Baltimore Symphony because uh, that piece is a real trap for percussionists. And it's because the bass drum and timpani are always playing the same boom, boom, boom. And the likelihood of the two of them striking that drum head at the precise instant, which is supposed to be the case, happens less often than it does. But in Baltimore, they always got it perfect every single time I ever heard that piece. So I asked one of the percussionists who played it, why that was the case. And he said, just watch my eyes the next time we play it. And I did. And he was not watching the conductor. He was watching his colleague on the bass drum. And he was timing his strike of the timpani head exactly with the strike of the bass drum. So they were just doing a visual cue between the two of them that made the conductor totally useless in the experience. But it's the way to get an exact um, unison. And I suspect, I mean, I'm going to turn the tables on you, Dennis, and ask you a lot of questions as well. Um, but ensemble playing, you as a leader, um, you need to visually uh, give cues not only to the first violin section, but to other parts of the orchestra from time to time as well. Isn't that the case?
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of my job. I think me with the way I play, hopefully will give some comfort and assurance to my colleagues. So if there's any doubt about when to come in, that I can give them that assurance. Already from the first answer, you can tell that Gary uh, speaks eloquently and beautifully. But this is 1 hour, Gary. Okay, we're not going to be here for 5 hours. So keep your answers short. We have a lot of things to get to. And those of us joining us today, please, any questions you have for Gary, for me, for Pacific Symphony, please put it into the chat. We already have a question, but first of all, Gary, a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit of background. Just the way you demonstrated timpani, it seems like you're a musician of some kind. Where did you do your schooling?
I'm a graduate of the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, as you know well, Dennis. Majored in trombone and um, music education, and then studied conducting after that. Um, my first real job was at Clarence High School in suburban Buffalo.
Oh, wow.
A terrific wind ensemble. Um, and then when I went on to Hart College of Music, where I got a degree in conducting, a master's, and then settled in Boston for a while, and gradually made the transition from performance to administration. Um, there was no huge outcry of dismay when I was no longer appearing on stage. So I took that as a sign. But I was the assistant conductor of the Boston Ballet,
Wow.
conductor of bands at Northeastern University, and the operations director for the Boston Pops. And if you know Boston, Huntington Avenue, those three institutions are all within 2 blocks of each other. So I just went back and forth, and I think in total probably made $22,000 for the year for all that. But it was heavenly because I was just immersed in music from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And my office at the Boston Symphony was on the mezzanine level, directly across from the mezzanine, and I had a squawk box on my desk, and I listened to every single rehearsal of the Boston Symphony. If there was something that was particularly interesting, it was literally 12 steps from my desk to the mezzanine to just walk in and observe what was going on. So I couldn't have had a more just a more terrific grounding in great music than that experience.
You're one of the first people I met when I came out to California, and you came right up to me and said, "Oh, I was the CEO of the Buffalo Philharmonic, and welcome." And ever since then, we've become friends. We've started playing golf together, and that's how this all started. Because when we're sitting around waiting to tee off, you would have so many stories, and I was thinking, I gotta share some of these stories with our audience, because I mean, some of the stuff that you've seen and some of the stuff you experienced is amazing. And I felt lucky to have heard those stories. So that's why Gary's here. So you've been CEO of many major orchestras in America. And what is your role at the Pacific Symphony?
My role has evolved at the Symphony. I came here as the vice president of development. And over the years, as our fundraising needs grew and in some ways became both more focused and more diverse, we needed to spend some exclusive time really focusing on our endowment, on our legacy giving. It's one of these wonderful things about growing up as an orchestra. We're kind of a prodigy, the Pacific Symphony. We've reached an artistic level and a budget size of an institution that is about 50 years younger than any other similar sized institution in the country. And that creates some unique opportunities and some unique opportunities, as does being in Orange County, which is its own little, very special kind of place. And then along the way, actually shortly after I came here in 2008, we lost Opera Pacific. And I saw that as a great loss for the community, but also a great opportunity for the symphony. So I became, as Carl said, the opera champion of the Pacific Symphony, and I'm very proud of that because we've done some wonderful work in opera, and it's become, again, as Carl says, part of our DNA.
Right. I know a lot of the musicians that we only do one or two operas a year, but that's some of the best music we do. And some people actually, that's their favorite week. And I mean, the first few years I've been here, the opera has been so successful. Madame Butterfly, this unknown or less known Ravel opera that was amazing. And because of Corona, of course, things got canceled, but hopefully we'll be back with the opera. Through you, I've had a chance to meet some amazing people, not only playing golf, of course, but some incredible board members, Mike and Ellie Gordon, Caroline Jean Choi. What is it that you actually do? Why are you good at what you do?
Um, why am I good at what I do? I mean, what I do is talk about what I love, which is orchestral music. So that I get a paycheck to do that is a bonus in a way. And what I've discovered here in Orange County and with the Pacific Symphony is that there's this unique blending of what I see as nearly the best of all possible worlds. You talk about Mike and Ellie Gordon, they're examples of volunteers and board leaders and philanthropists that any nonprofit in the country would die to have in their circle. And it's because they love music. I mean, they met as college sweethearts going to the Philadelphia Orchestra, and Mike keeps telling me sitting up in the $1.50 seats because that's all they could afford. And as you know well, they've endowed the concertmaster's chair in perpetuity. We're very, very happy and proud of that. So Mike and Ollie are good examples. Carol Choi, a relatively new board member, is another great example because several summers ago, we managed to get the Van Cliburn piano competition gold medalist for one of our summer concerts, and he was the first Korean to ever win the gold medal. And someone acquainted me with Carol, and I said, Carol, we need to get 1,000 Koreans to come to this concert. And she had about 3 weeks, and she did it. And this fellow was it was like being there with the Beatles. He was mobbed by all his fellow countrymen. But it goes beyond that. And we have a great board, but we also have, among the orchestras where I've worked, the most terrific, engaged, and interesting musicians of any orchestra in the country. You know that immediately if you watch them on video or on any kind of performance, because every single time, you know this, Dennis, because you lead by example, whether it's a family concert for a few hundred kids or it's Carnegie Hall, you'll see the same intensity and commitment to their playing, every single note, every single piece. It just never strays from that. And of course, Carl leads that by example and by inspiration. So that is also truly fantastic. And then lastly, I don't want to minimize in any way our administrative staff. I've worked for 5 different orchestras, and I have never encountered the talent that is here, as well as the commitment that is here. When I came here and saw the production values that went into a family concert, for example, I couldn't believe it. It was better work for a family concert than you'd see at some opera companies for a major production. And again, every single thing with a really, really high level of excellence as the baseline and building on from there. So that's
Yeah,
why
I mean, I'm going to add to your answer a little bit. I wanted to answer it actually for you. I thought you would have trouble answering, but obviously you didn't. I've seen you work a little bit, and I think your talent and why you're good at what you do is because you, like you said, you love music, you love the Pacific Symphony, and the passion you have for music and for this organization comes out in what you say. And I think that's what gets people to believe you, to trust in you, and to work with you. And so all the musicians are grateful to you and everyone in this administration. As many of you know, we just signed our contract.
Dennis, excuse me. Just before you go on, I do want to add one more thing to that.
Sure.
It struck me today. I assume that most of us watched at least part of the inaugural ceremonies from Washington. And to me, the theme for the day from the president was unity, but the manifestation of that was music. And from Lady Gaga's Star Spangled Banner to Jennifer Lopez to the military bands of all kinds and vintages and so forth, every musical moment was a time when everyone was connected, no matter what your political affiliation or your beliefs or anything else. So that's really what we have to offer and to look forward to.
No, it's amazing. And I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no worries. I was telling Alexi, I don't even need to be here. You could just talk for an hour. That'd be a lot easier. But as many of you know, we just signed our contract. So a lot of us on the board, the administration, the players, of course, we're frustrated. But now we're ready to go, and we'll be back initially, of course, online. But sooner, hopefully, rather than later, we'll be back on stage, and I can't wait to be back on stage with my colleagues to perform. So for me, being in Europe, I'm used to a lot of new music. And when I heard that you were involved in a few commissions and world premieres, I was impressed. and they weren't just a local composer and a small soloist, but huge names with huge projects. Can you set up one of your projects for us, please?
Sure. I've always had a great interest in new music. One of my responsibilities at the Boston Symphony was managing Collage, which was the Boston Symphony's new music ensemble. So we did routinely 20 world premieres in a season. That was all we did. But you and I talked about two pieces that I'm happy we're going to hear a little snippet of today. One was in Buffalo. As you remember from your days in Buffalo, there was a local conductor named Joseph Wincenz, Dr. Joseph Wincenz, who was a legend. And Joe had a very talented daughter named Carol Wincenz, who became a professional flute soloist. And Carol and the Buffalo Philharmonic together commissioned a piece by Lucas Foss for her as soloist. It was called the Renaissance Concerto, and it was because the style of the piece was to be as the music of Renaissance. Well, anyone who's heard Lucas Foss's music would take that with a grain of salt, and I'll let our listeners be the judge. I think so. Alexi has a little sample of this for us.
So I think that was Carol Wincenz herself performing. And for those of you who don't know Lucas Foss was a triple major at Curtis. He was a piano, composition, and conductor. And I believe he was music director of Buffalo Philharmonic for a time being.
Right. So at the premiere of that piece, Lucas was conducting it. Carol was the soloist. And the second movement is very creative because it's a call and response, a canon, like a round, between the solo flute on stage and a string quartet that was in the balcony. So the performance came and went, and I went backstage with my wife afterwards and to congratulate Lucas. And I said, Lucas, I mean, I love the piece, but the canon in the second movement, that was particularly just really touched me. And we had 2 kids under the age of 5 at the time, which meant my wife wasn't sleeping all that much. And we got in the car to go home that evening. She said, Carrie, I know I doze off at some of these concerts, but did I miss a canon? I said, yes, you did.
So in 1812 and in this Lucas Foss.
That's right.
Exactly. The next concerto is something a little bit closer to this area. Can you set up this next clip?
Oh my goodness, I love talking about this experience. This may be the quintessential musical experience from soup to nuts in my lifetime. Carl asked James Newton Howard. James Newton Howard is, of course, a great movie composer and on the Symphony's board of directors, and has built a wonderful relationship with Pacific Symphony, including uh, commissions of three pieces and one that you're not supposed to know about yet, coming up. Um, but for Carl's 25th anniversary, we had budgeted one major commitment or a commission, and he said, I really would like to commission James to write a piece. And conversations over time evolved into that it would be a violin concerto. And James Ennis was selected as the violinist. And to watch the creation of this piece from the initial conversations to it coming together literally across the world with Carl, James, and James sending clips back and forth to each other, to the rehearsal segment in the Segerstrom Center, to the premiere performance, which James Ennis played by memory. The first time I've ever seen a major premiere of a big work played by memory. It was just an extraordinary experience. I can't even make an analogy. Um, but it was certainly a highlight of my life. And every time I see either James, I tell them how lucky I am to have been part of that. And I know for all of those who are on this call who heard that piece, it'd be about 6 years ago now. I think you'll be pleased to know that it's becoming one of the real staples of the violin repertoire. The last time I talked to James Ennis, he had had performances with about 20 different orchestras, and it was continuing to grow. So it's not a new piece that will never be heard again. And I think Alexi has a clip of that as well.
Yeah, this is James Ennis, I think, with the Detroit Symphony. There's no video,
Oh
but
yes, right.
you'll get to hear the incredible colors. But yeah, please enjoy. No, it's beautiful music. I remember, especially some Europeans, they when they poo-pooed American music, they say, "Oh, it sounds like movie music." But is that bad? I think movie music is amazing, and that sounds like movie music, and it sounds
And very good music, movie music written over the years. The
exactly.
opening of that piece, that major third, da da da, always reminds me of summertime, Porgy and Bess. Um, but Dennis, here's a piece. This is a violin concerto. There's nothing technical about what we heard there right now. It's just beautiful
Mhm.
melodic lines, and I think allows a soloist to, I don't know a good way to say it, but get into a piece in kind of a different way. How am I right? Would you be
No,
caught up in that?
absolutely. And I mean, it's the color, the orchestration, everything is beautiful. And of course, James Ennis, fellow Canadian, is sounds incredible. And hopefully he'll be back with the Pacific Symphony soon. But yeah, I mean, when you told me that you were involved in this project, I was like, oh, it's amazing, amazing piece. We got a bunch of questions now. I'm going to start with something I don't know if you know the answer to, but let me know. How large is the endowment, and how does that compare with other orchestras of the size and quality of Pacific Symphony?
That's easy. The answer is not large enough. Uh, our endowment is about 22, 23 million dollars. Um, Kind of bittersweet. We had uh, three longtime supporters. I mean, right from the very beginning, who passed away in the last uh, 4 months, and gifts that they had set up in their legacy will increase our endowment by about 20% from where it is now.
Mm.
And the vision that those, I'll call them founders, they weren't all here at the beginning, but near the beginning, had for this orchestra to see it realized and perpetuated through their gifts is really what endowment is all about. The in our business, the operating, to answer the second part of the question, to have all the different revenues, ticket sales, annual fund, gala, so forth, uh, to have those in a healthy proportion to each other. The endowment corpus, from which we take 4 to 5% each year to support operating, should be about 5 times our operating budget. So if we were to be where we are, or where we should be, we would have an endowment close to $100 million because our budget is around 20 million in round numbers. So that's something that is constantly a priority for us. I talked earlier about the Pacific Symphony being kind of a prodigy. We've grown so fast. Uh, Unlike the Boston Symphony or even something like the Grand Rapids, Michigan Symphony, these orchestras are 2, 3 times as old as we are, and they've had the benefit of generations after generations becoming in the habit of giving to the orchestra or leaving legacies and so forth. So we'll get there. We've got the horsepower to do it, but we can't stop.
We have a question from your days back in Boston. You were at the Boston Pops during the transition from Fiedler to Williams. What was that like?
Um, That was fun. I was, I don't know, 23 maybe. I was young, and I just fell into this wonderful job of running the Pops for a couple of seasons. And it was at the time when Arthur Fiedler was getting quite frail, um, and we were bringing in lots of different guest conductors. One of whom was John Williams. Another, and only our older listeners will remember this name, although it was a very important one, was Mitch Miller. And Mitch really, really, really wanted to be the next conductor of the Boston Pops. And he would call me and say, "Gary, what are you doing for dinner?" So, "I don't know, Mitch." He said, "Well, let me take you to dinner." I said, "Well, you're in New York and I'm in Boston." "Yeah, I'll fly up." And he would fly up and walk in with these grocery bags of reviews from the last 40 years to show me how much he deserved to be the next conductor of the Boston Pops, which I had nothing to do with, except I did chair the committee after Fiedler died. And John Williams first came to our attention. He came and conducted, and it was a wonderful weekend. I was in May. In August, Arthur died. In September, John Williams' manager called me and said, so you got a little bit of a problem there. And I said, no, we're looking at lots of people. And he said, did you ever think of talking with John? And I said, you know, John makes more money getting out of bed in the morning and collecting another days of residuals than this job pays. And he said, well, don't underestimate his interest. So I passed that up the food chain to the senior management, and they brought John back, had some conversations, brought John back to do Christmas Pops that year, and hired him immediately. And he was there for about 20 years, and then Keith Lockhart came.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, I had a chance to work with Maestro John Williams on the last Star Wars movie, and I can't believe the energy. He stands the whole time. He's not sitting, and he's energetic and passionate, and no, he's really something else. And I can imagine you got a lot of stories of John Williams.
May I tell just one?
Please tell many.
No, this one is a good one. The first time he came to conduct, I went over to his hotel. I had some scores to deliver to him, and he was in a suite, and he invited me in, and I gave him the scores, and we chatted a bit, and there was a piano there, and music paper spread all over the place. And I said, oh, what's that? He said, I'm working on a new movie. I said, really? Can I hear a little bit? He said, sure. So I was the very first person on the planet to ever hear the opening of Jaws. He sat down and started da, 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 and went on from there.
That's amazing.
I'm sure that means more to me than it did to John. It does to John.
We have a question from someone from Milwaukee. I have a question for Gary. This is Carol Ann Tessios, chair of the board of counselors and on Gary's committee. I let him know that I'm from Milwaukee. So I have a funny question, and it must be signed the Milwaukee girl. Which was your favorite, Blatz, Pabst, or Miller's? Perfect.
Well, as the president of the Milwaukee Symphony, of course, I loved them all, not to drink, but because they were all good supporters of the orchestra. Miller was certainly the most involved and philanthropic. And I remember Miller Beer sponsoring one of the Milwaukee Symphony's tours to Carnegie Hall and Kennedy Center and Boston. And we took the CEO to dinner after the concert that we did in Milwaukee. Lynn Harrell was our soloist. And I said, Maestro, you must order Miller beer. It's essential. So we sat at this fancy restaurant, and the conductor was seated next to the CEO from Miller, and the waiter came around and said, what would you like? And he proudly said, I will have a Miller beer. And the waiter said, we don't serve that here. So I imagine there was a distributor that was looking for a new job the following week.
We have a question from our good friend Lauren. Thank you for helping establish Pacific Symphony's opera series, which in my opinion is the best thing Pacific Symphony does. Puccini's Madame Butterfly was superb. Are there any plans to perform opera virtually in the near future?
Yes. I don't want to preempt our announcement, but as you mentioned a few moments ago, we've taken a long time to work out an agreement with the musicians that really I think is reflective of everyone's desire to get the orchestra back performing in a variety of ways. And in some ways, the agreement is quite innovative because it allows us to do more virtual activity than we had in the old labor agreement. So frankly, now we're mostly waiting for health protocols because we're sort of at the bottom of the food chain of permission from the state to the county to the Segerstrom Center and then us. So only when everybody else has signed off can we really get back to work. But Carl and Eileen Jeanette, our artistic vice president, have put together a number of really interesting programs that will be rolled out virtually, and then hopefully in a not too distant future transitioning to at least partially live in the spring. And it'll get our musicians back together, which is so essential to keep what we built. And
Get the band back together, exactly.
included in that is plans for a major opera.
I think you're understating. I think Carl has 500 programs for the upcoming spring season. I know that he's been sitting there just trying to figure out different ways that we can be on stage, different size,
Right.
different instrumentation. So he's itching to go. I know all the musicians are itching to go. We need the go ahead from the health people, like you said. But it's everyone is relieved that the contract is signed, and I think the first rehearsal, I mean, I've mentioned it in different mixtures, but the first rehearsal will be very, very emotional. I think just playing together for the first time in a room.
I cannot imagine what it must be like for you folks. Honest to God, you know, what skills I have in pushing papers or sending emails or whatever are nothing like the talents that you have, and to have that pulled out from under you like overnight, I just can't imagine it. So
yes, it's funny going through texts in April and March saying, oh, you know, I heard this might go into the summer. I heard that in September we might still be locked down. And to read these texts, they're so funny because it's been almost a year now. And the last thing we did was a production with ABT, and then we had our gala, thankfully. But then since then we've really been sidelined, and it's been devastating for so many of us.
You know what's really ironic?
Pardon me?
You know what's really ironic?
What's that?
Your golf hasn't gotten any better.
No, very good, Gary. I mean, we should have talked an hour about your swing, but I mean, I think no one wants to hear that.
Well, listen,
I have a request
as long as we're on that, Dennis.
Yes.
There's a football game coming up this weekend.
Lovely. And this is one of our.
There we are. Okay.
With Lauren.
I'll save the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, you know, we live in the part of the world where we can play golf during the winter, and we've been getting our money's worth by taking a lot of strokes out on the golf course. I have a request for our listeners right now. If you guys can put in the chat or the Q&A people that you want to see on the mixers, that would be interesting for us because. I mean, there's lots of musicians, there's people on our board, administrative staff, soloists, conductors, but any ideas that you guys have, please feel free to write into our chat or even email directly to Pacific Symphony. But we'd love to get your feedback because otherwise we're gonna just have Gary every week and telling stories about his career. I know you have a connection with Carnegie Hall, and you've brought many organizations there. Can you go through a few of your experiences with the great Carnegie Hall in New York?
I've been monitoring here when you said that I might come back. The participant level went down by 50%. You just can't wait for next time. Carnegie Hall, when I was, I think most everyone knows you were the concertmaster of the Buffalo Philharmonic, and I was the executive director there for 10 years, 10 winters, as I like to say it. I made it a priority to get the orchestra, which the Buffalo Philharmonic has an amazing reputation with amazing conducting pedigree and so forth. But they had, for financial reasons, hadn't been to Carnegie Hall in about 15 years, maybe longer when I was there. So I was able to arrange for us to get a concert at Carnegie Hall. And Simeon Bishkoff was our conductor at that time, which is can be a whole hour of stories in itself, but Bischoff was fantastic. And we decided the summer before that we would do Shostakovich Fifth at Carnegie Hall. And Simeon came and into my office one day and he said, let's go down to Wolf Trap because Rostropovich is doing Shostakovich Fifth, and I'd like to talk with him about it. And I think it'll be good to hear. So we flew down, and I spent the entire afternoon in a little practice room at Wolf Trap. And Rostropovich really was mentored by Shostakovich, and was what was happening was I was getting from Rostropovich in Russian to Bischoff everything that he had learned from Dmitri Shostakovich about the piece. I didn't understand a word because it was all in Russian, but to see this being transmitted from Shostakovich to Rostropovich, and they would play the piano, and then Bischoff would ask a question and so forth, was truly, really, absolutely amazing. So that was a great Carnegie Hall. I would always go with the Boston Symphony when they played. They used to play 4 concerts a year at Carnegie Hall. So that was really quite wonderful. I also went to Carnegie Hall with, took the Milwaukee Symphony there. And then the one time, Buffalo being Buffalo and winters being winters, we had a snowstorm that shut down the airport on the day we were supposed to go to Carnegie Hall to play. And one plane left the Buffalo airport, and on the plane were the musicians of the Buffalo Philharmonic and the Buffalo Sabres hockey team. We were playing the Islanders, Long Island Islanders that night. But the Shostakovich was the big hit because the critic, and back in those days, all the concerts got big reviews and so forth. The critic's review began, once in a very, very long time, do I get to hear a concert like the concert I heard last night? And he was referring to our concert, the Buffalo Philharmonic's return to Carnegie Hall. So the next week, Bischoff and I walked into the Anchor Bar, which is where buffalo chicken wings were actually invented. And he got a standing ovation, and we got free chicken wings for life. So it goes to show for life.
Wow.
I don't know if you ever went to the Anchor Bar when you were there, but they are really good.
Wow, fantastic. Did you go to Carnegie Hall with the Pacific Symphony?
Oh, of course. Yes, that was a great trip. And that's another hat that I've worn at the Symphony is organizing our patron trips.
Right.
And we had 40 some people who were in New York for most of the week, ending, of course, with our Carnegie Hall concert. And one of my favorite shots is a shot of me standing in front of the 3-sheet poster out in front of Carnegie Hall with the sold out sign across the top of it. There was, it was the all Philip Glass 80th birthday celebration concert. So New York is a real hot spot for fans of Philip Glass, and there were lots of their people there, but it really felt like a home game. I mean, we had so many. Oh, Alexi, you are on the ball. There we are.
On the ball.
A third of those people were there because they were from Orange County or were fans of the Pacific Symphony. And what a memorable, very special night that was.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the picture, I can hear the sounds, and the hall full of people. It just makes me. It just gives me chills, and knowing that we'll be back on stage soon, sooner rather than later, it gives me hope. And to see all my colleagues, just the back of their heads, some of them, but it's great. And Like
That's
you,
very, Alexi, thank you for putting that up. That brings back such good memories. I can point to where I was sitting.
right?
Uh, what a wonderful evening that was.
Uh, and and for those who haven't been to Carnegie Hall, what makes Carnegie Hall great? Why is it Carnegie Hall?
Well, I mean, there have been books and by the dozens written about this. I think it's because they don't get overly fancy. They stayed true to the form of having the stage in the room, not back in a separate area like you would have with like the Segerstrom theater where the Broadway shows are. So you're in the room with the music. The shape of the hall is rectangular, like Symphony Hall in Boston or the Music for Ryan in Vienna. The materials, not the most comfortable seats in the world, but everything was designed with acoustics foremost in mind. The walls are all plaster, um, as is the dome over the stage. And just like a Stradivarius violin, once you've earned the reputation for being something truly special, nobody goes into this hall imagining that they're going to have an inferior acoustical experience. So there's that whole expectation, which I sincerely believe is part of why that is one of the world's great halls.
No,
What do you think? What do you
yeah,
think?
as a student, I had a chance to play there, and then throughout my career, so I actually had a chance to be a part of the Stern seminar, the New York, and we rehearsed actually on stage there, and we gave a concert, a trio concert on the main stage. It was, as you can imagine, one of the highlights of my life. And then I was part of the New York String Seminar with Mr. Laredo conducting over Christmas. And then when I was concertmaster of the Soul Philharmonic came to Carnegie Hall on tour, and that was, of course, a very special concert. But it was a little bit chaotic because we were a little bit worried we weren't going to sell tickets. So we basically said it'll be free, but you just need a ticket. And they printed out, let's say, 50,000 tickets. So unfortunately, the people who had tickets, they all showed up, and it was full, and they had at least another Carnegie Hall size audience outside complaining and upset that they couldn't get in. So I mean, it was disastrous. But yeah, Carnegie Hall is amazing. The acoustics are incredible, and the history. Just walking backstage, all these things are amazing.
I,
Yeah, I guess we only have one person who's putting in a request. So someone suggested Barry Perkins, Jim Self, John, and a violist. I'm not sure if that's a viola joke, but any violist or a specific violist? Barry Perkins, we've already had, so please check YouTube or Facebook. His mixer was fascinating, and he's doing incredibly well these days, obviously. Jim Self, definitely someone that we're thinking of having soon. John, I'm assuming is John Forsyth, our CEO, and he's definitely someone that we're planning on having soon. But Miss Parker, please let me know what violist is. And if it is any violist, that would be the best viola joke ever, of course.
I think it was Bob Becker who sent that in.
Oh, no, it's from Fiona Parker. Oh, is Fiona Parker Bob Becker? So Gary, what's in the near future for Pacific Symphony? What are some of our goals? What are some of our hurdles that we need to be concerned with, in your opinion?
It's a great question, and I think it's a question that every institution, individual, and country almost are asking of themselves these days because there's so much uncertainty. I'm very proud of the work that we've done to retain loyalty and connection with our patrons. Um, and in return, they have been very generous in continuing to support the orchestra through this time, even without concerts. We pivoted quite effectively, I think, to do a lot of online work and to continue and in some ways augment or change our education and community outreach work, which is the most extensive of any orchestra in the country, so that most of that has continued to go on. The musicians themselves have stepped forward with a lot of you as well, Dennis. I love your Concertmaster um, compilation of a few months ago. But those sorts of things have bubbled up from the musicians themselves. So while we haven't been an orchestra in our historic traditional sense on the stage, playing standard repertoire, we've been very much involved in the community and talk every single day. The staff was just talking today in a meeting about how somehow we're busier than we are when we're doing concerts. I'm not sure how that all works, but we are prepared to come back strong and in some ways a bit different. The new agreement with the musicians allows us to do some things that weren't possible or as easy before. And what we hear from audiences in the surveys we've done is that there's a lot of pent up energy, that people want to listen to music live in the hall. And for me, that's a big part of it. I want to be back in our home and experiencing the entire gamut of the musical experience, from the performance to the hall to the socialization. So we will have announcements in the next several weeks about the spring season that I alluded to earlier. Our volunteers are working quite hard on our spring gala, which is going to happen. And we're looking at next year in our next season with many different points of view and ideas. So stay tuned.
Right. No, I mean, as you can imagine, everyone on the artistic side, I think that we're trying to think outside the box and trying to reach new audiences and with different platforms. So it's a totally different game. I think last week we had three PSYO graduates who are now in college. And when I was that age, I was like, if someone asked me, it was like, what are you going to do when you graduate? I'm going to be in Philadelphia Orchestra. And they had different thoughts. They're like, because of this Corona, they're really having to be more creative, thinking online, a lot of stuff, electronic stuff, electronic media.
Mhm.
So I can imagine the staff has to kind of pivot and look at our industry in a whole different light. And
Well, and it's, as you said earlier, Carl is he's like a kid in a candy store. He's really, and he needs to have input from so many different areas. How far apart can these people be? How long can these folks play? When do you need a mask? And how can we organize all of that? So it's quite complicated, but he inspires us all.
Right. No, I mean it's like you said, a lot of the leaders are leading by example, and we're trying to follow, and it's exciting that we're almost back on stage. I feel like we're getting our schedules. I posted on Facebook a folder that I'm doing bowing, so we're really close. And I'm, like I said earlier, all the musicians are grateful to you and people like you in the office who and you joke about this all the time when we're playing golf. You're like, I got to go back to work so I can get you to feed you, and it's true.
I think it's to pay off your bets.
But I feel like an orchestra is 3-4 different parts, and every part is equally important. You see the musicians on stage, but without the management and the administration behind the scenes, nothing's really possible. So thank you very much, Gary, and thank you for spending an hour. And I think I hope everyone enjoyed your stories. I enjoyed them. And the next time I'm on the golf course, I'm gonna take your money. We bet $1 a hole. I'm gonna crush you. For those of you who are with us right now, next week we have 2 of our newest members on On the staff, there are librarian and our personnel manager,
Oh, great.
and they're fascinating people. They're incredible at what they do, and you'll get to see, yeah, how an orchestra runs. These two people are critical in the daily workings of an orchestra. So I hope you guys can all join us next week. And until next week, please be safe, and I will see you soon. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Dennis. Bravo.
Pleasure.